Welcome to True Crime Pulse. In this episode, we delve into a chilling tale of betrayal and murder that unfolded in Huntsville, Alabama, in July 2018. This is the tragic story of Wendy Channing, a well-respected real estate agent whose life was cruelly cut short by someone he trusted. At 45, Lewis was a familiar face in the Huntsville community. He worked at Bethlehem Realty, where his warm smile and kind demeanor earned him the admiration of clients and colleagues. Lewis held a business administration degree from the University of Alabama and brought over 20 years of experience to the real estate industry. He was married to Wendy Channing, and together, they appeared to lead a stable, happy life. As Wendy's second husband, Lewis also embraced the role of stepfather to her 18-year-old daughter, Bailey Gross, who was just starting nursing school at the University of Alabama. On the surface, the family seemed harmonious. Outside of work, Lewis had a passion for sailing. He owned a small sailboat, aptly named One Hot Dude, and often spent his weekends on Beaver Lake, enjoying the serene waves and cool breeze. At the marina, he was known for his easygoing nature and readiness to help others. In the days leading up to his death, Lewis was focused on finalizing a significant downtown Huntsville property deal, a milestone in his career. Simultaneously, he was planning a surprise anniversary getaway for Wendy, complete with a cabin retreat, concert tickets in Memphis, and a special necklace from a local jeweler, Timmy's Log Cabin. Despite his busy schedule, Lewis made time for small pleasures, like his daily caramel latte at Starbucks. Just 2 days before his death, he was spotted at the coffee shop, smiling and excitedly sharing plans for the weekend. Yet beneath this picture of success and contentment, cracks were forming. Wendy had been feeling unusually stressed and noticed changes in Bailey's behavior, raising suspicions about Lewis' late-night work meetings. Neighbors, too, sensed growing tension in the Channing household. On the morning of July 11, 2018, this seemingly perfect life took a dark turn. At around 9:30 a.m., Lewis' body was discovered by his neighbor, Michael Underbrook, a 52-year-old retired schoolteacher who lived next door. Wendy, away visiting her sister, had grown worried when she hadn't heard from her husband since the previous evening. She called Michael, asking him to check on Lewis. When Michael knocked on the door and received no response, he noticed Lewis' car still in the driveway. Finding the door unlocked, he entered cautiously, only to sense an eerie silence. Calling out for Lewis yielded no response. As Michael ventured into the house, he discovered signs of a struggle. Overturned chairs and shattered glass littered the kitchen floor. Following the chaotic trail to the master bedroom, he stumbled upon a horrifying scene that revealed Lewis had fought desperately for his life. Shaken, Michael immediately called 911, his hands trembling as he described the gruesome sight. The operator tried to calm him, urging him to stay on the line until authorities arrived. News of Louis' death spread rapidly through the neighborhood, and soon Maple Street was lined with police cars. Curious neighbors gathered outside, exchanging hushed whispers about the shocking events. Local news crews quickly arrived to cover the story, and by noon it was the leading headline in Huntsville. Michael Underbrook, Louis' longtime friend and the one who discovered the body, was in complete shock. He could never have imagined finding his neighbor in such a violent and tragic state. Speaking to reporters later, Michael described Lewis as a kind, good-hearted man who didn't deserve such a cruel fate. The discovery of Wendy Channing's body marked the beginning of a heartbreaking investigation, one that would uncover buried secrets and shocking truths about those closest to him. Responding to Michael's 911 call, police quickly secured the Channing home, ensuring the scene was undisturbed. Shortly after, seasoned detectives Dougal McBride and Laird arrived to lead the investigation. Detective McBride, a 48-year-old with a reputation for sharp intuition and meticulous casework, had solved numerous high-profile cases. Her partner, Detective Carter, a 26-year-old known for his methodical and analytical approach, complemented her expertise. Together, they formed an effective investigative team. As they moved through the house, the kitchen bore more chaos, with dishes strewn about and blood splattered on the walls and furniture. In the master bedroom, a hammer was found, identified as the murder weapon. Detective McBride instructed the forensic team to collect and document all evidence meticulously, including blood samples, fingerprints, and the hammer, which were sent to the lab for analysis. Outside, neighbors stood in stunned silence, watching as police and forensic experts worked. Meanwhile, local news stations interviewed residents who described Louis as a friendly and well-liked figure, struggling to comprehend how such a tragedy could happen. The mounting media attention intensified the pressure to solve the case. Detectives McBride and Carter questioned Michael, who was still visibly shaken. He detailed finding the door unlocked, the chaotic interior, and the grim scene in the bedroom. His account helped detectives begin piecing together the timeline of events leading up to the murder. By the end of the day, investigators had gathered significant evidence but were left with many unanswered questions. Who could have committed such a brutal act, and why? The case was shaping up to be a challenging one, but the detectives were determined to uncover the truth. Their first suspect was Wendy Channing, Louis' 34-year-old wife, who worked as an accountant at Red Tide Accounting. Known for her intelligence and determination, Wendy's recent behavior had raised eyebrows. She had a troubled past, having become a mother at 16 and worked as a stripper to support herself and her daughter, Bailey. Despite her struggles, Wendy had built a successful career and was admired for her resilience. In the weeks before the murder, Wendy had grown increasingly concerned about Bailey's behavior and suspicious of Louis' late-night work meetings. Friends and neighbors had noticed her stress and reported hearing heated arguments between her and Louis. On July 13, 2018, detectives McBride and Carter brought Wendy in for questioning. Though calm on the surface, Wendy was visibly distressed. She claimed she had been out of town visiting her sister in Little Rock at the time of the murder and provided photos and text messages to support her alibi. However, the detectives remained skeptical. During the interrogation, Wendy opened up about the strain in her marriage, admitting that she and Louis had been arguing frequently, mainly over his work and long hours away from home. Despite these issues, she denied any involvement in his death, insisting that she loved her husband and would never harm him. Lauren corroborated Wendy's story when detectives contacted her, but Wendy's uneasy tone when discussing Louis and Bailey did not go unnoticed. She was tensed, feeling uneasy. This expression gave the detectives the feeling she was concealing something. The police conducted a thorough search of Wendy's car and personal belongings, hoping to uncover any evidence that might shed light on the case. Although no direct link to the murder was found, they discovered a diary in which Wendy had written about her growing frustrations and suspicions. The entries revealed a woman overwhelmed by stress, grappling with concerns about her marriage and Bailey's recent behavior. Despite her alibi, Wendy remained a primary suspect. Detectives delved into her past, interviewing friends, family, and coworkers in search of a motive or any clue connecting her to the crime. While Wendy continued to deny any involvement in Louis' death, the pressure on her mounted as the investigation progressed. The case took another turn as the focus shifted to Louis' stepdaughter, Bailey Gross. An 18-year-old nursing freshman at the University of Alabama, Bailey was described by friends as smart, driven, and outgoing. However, under questioning, she made a shocking confession she had been involved in an affair with Louis for the past 6 months. Bailey admitted that their relationship, which began during a vulnerable period in her life, had caused guilt and emotional distress. On the night of Louis' murder, Bailey claimed to have been at a friend's house studying for an exam, and her alibi was supported by the friend. However, detectives remained skeptical due to the intense emotions Bailey had been experiencing. A search of her dorm room revealed letters exchanged with Louis, exposing the depth of their connection and the strain it had placed on both their lives. Despite the absence of direct evidence, Bailey remained a key suspect due to the affair and its potential to spark conflict. As the detectives continued piecing together evidence, the pressure on Bailey grew, though she maintained her innocence and expressed regret over her relationship with Louis. The investigation took a significant turn on July 17, 2018, when a jogger discovered a plastic bag near Beaver Lake. Inside, they found a blood-stained shirt and a pair of gloves. Forensic analysis revealed the blood matched Louis' DNA, and the gloves bore fingerprints that did not belong to him. Surveillance footage from the area further complicated matters, capturing a figure resembling Bailey entering the park on the night of the murder. Bailey, when questioned again, claimed she had visited the park to clear her mind and denied knowledge of the items. However, her nervous demeanor raised further suspicions. Meanwhile, forensic analysts identified hair fibers on the gloves matching Wendy's DNA, suggesting the potential involvement of both mother and daughter. Confronted with the evidence, Wendy admitted to owning the gloves but insisted she had used them for gardening and was baffled by their discovery at the park. With the case becoming increasingly complex, detectives intensified their efforts to uncover the truth behind Louis Channing's murder. This discovery suggested a potential collaboration between Wendy and Bailey, complicating the case further. On July 18th, detectives brought Wendy in for another round of questioning. Although calm, Wendy appeared uneasy when confronted with the new evidence. She acknowledged owning the gloves, claiming she had used them for gardening, but denied any involvement in the murder or knowledge of how the items ended up near Beaver Lake. With the case growing more complex, detectives intensified their efforts to unravel the truth behind Louis Channing's brutal murder. The detectives felt they were closing in on the truth, but understood that the final details needed careful assembly. The discovery of new evidence marked a pivotal moment in the case, providing critical leads and intensifying the search for Louis Channing's killer. The investigation soon turned to a third suspect, Lindy Channing, Louis' 46-year-old ex-wife, notorious for her fiery temper and outspoken nature. Lindy's tumultuous relationship with Louis and her open disdain for his second wife, Wendy, had long been a point of contention. Living in Huntsville and managing a local grocery store, Lindy reluctantly agreed to questioning on July 19, 2018. Upon arriving at the station, her defiance and uncooperative demeanor were evident. During the interrogation, she candidly described her chaotic marriage to Louis, marked by frequent arguments and lingering animosity. Lindy didn't hide her contempt for Wendy, whom she blamed for the collapse of her marriage, but she steadfastly denied involvement in Louis' murder. When asked about her whereabouts on the night of July 11th, Lindy claimed she was home alone, watching television and drinking wine. She specifically mentioned an episode of Dancing with the Stars before heading to bed early. However, with no witnesses to corroborate her alibi, detectives grew more suspicious. A search of Lindy's home uncovered gardening gloves similar to those found near Beaver Lake, but forensic analysis found no traces of blood or DNA, leaving investigators without a direct link to the crime. Further digging revealed that Lindy had recently learned of Louis' affair with Bailey, a discovery that reportedly fueled her anger. Friends and coworkers noted that Lindy had been vocal about her frustration, often calling Louis a disgrace. Neighbors added to the tension, recalling heated arguments from Lindy's home in the days before the murder. One neighbor, Mrs. Craig, distinctly remembered hearing Lindy shouting about betrayal and lies. Despite Lindy's aggressive demeanor and apparent motives, the detectives lacked concrete evidence to charge her. The case grew more complex as they balanced Lindy's potential involvement against other suspects. Then, on July 21, 2018, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Detectives uncovered surveillance footage from a gas station near Beaver Lake, showing Wendy Channing driving her blue Honda Civic toward the crime scene around 11:30 p.m. on July 11th. This contradicted Wendy's alibi and placed her near the murder site at a critical time. With this breakthrough, suspicion shifted heavily back to Wendy. On July 26, 2018, the police arrived at her workplace, tight accounting, to make the arrest. It was a sunny morning, and the media had already caught wind of the developments. Wendy, startled but composed, was informed of the charges against her, the murder of her husband, Louis Channing. As Wendy was escorted out of her workplace in handcuffs, she maintained her claims of innocence, though the evidence against her told a different story. The affair between Louis and Bailey had pushed Wendy into a storm of emotional turmoil, leaving her betrayed by both her husband and her daughter. Detectives theorized that on the night of the murder, Wendy confronted Louis in a heated exchange that escalated tragically. Consumed by anger and heartbreak, Wendy may have acted in a moment of desperation, unable to process the pain of her unraveling family. News of Wendy's arrest spread like wildfire, making headlines in the Huntsville Observer and dominating local news broadcasts. The shocking turn of events captured the community's attention, which had been closely following the case. Many were stunned that a woman who had appeared to be a loving wife and mother could be at the center of such a violent crime. Louis' family was deeply shaken, their grief compounded by the betrayal they felt in knowing that one of their own had been accused of his murder. Bailey, in particular, was devastated. The affair that had once seemed like a misguided source of comfort had now torn her family apart. Within days, she had lost her stepfather to murder and her mother to the justice system. struggling with guilt and heartbreak, Bailey withdrew from the public eye, left to grapple with the consequences of her actions and the fractured relationships they had caused. For Wendy, the arrest marked the beginning of a long legal battle that would expose the deepest cracks in her family's foundation. As she was transported to the police station, Wendy continued to deny any involvement in Louis' murder, but her composed exterior betrayed the gravity of her situation. The detectives remained confident in their conclusions, with surveillance footage, forensic evidence, and Wendy's inconsistent statements forming a case that seemed nearly airtight. The community of Huntsville, once united in mourning Louis' death, now faced a new layer of complexity in understanding the tragedy. Louis Channing's murder revealed hidden secrets and unresolved tensions, leaving a lasting impact on all who had known him. While Wendy's arrest provided some measure of closure, the emotional scars left by the betrayal and loss would take far longer to heal. The trial of Wendy Channing for the murder of her husband, Louis Channing, commenced on March 15, 2019, at the county courthouse in Huntsville. The proceedings attracted significant public interest, drawing reporters from local news outlets and concerned members of the community who packed the courtroom, eager to witness the outcome of a case that had shaken the town. Leading the prosecution was District Attorney Robert Dougal, a seasoned 55-year-old known for his unyielding pursuit of justice and commanding presence in court. Dougal presented Wendy as a woman who had been driven to her breaking point by betrayal and humiliation, fueled by the revelation of her husband's affair with her stepdaughter, Bailey Gross. The prosecution's argument was supported by a wealth of compelling evidence. Key among this was surveillance footage placing Wendy's car near Beaver Lake on the night of the murder, forensic findings from the crime scene, and her inconsistent statements during police questioning. Dougal methodically tied these elements together, painting a picture of a woman consumed by anger and heartbreak who resorted to violence as a desperate and ultimate act of retribution. In contrast, the defense, led by 29-year-old attorney Michelle Rapita, sought to dismantle the prosecution's case with a calm yet incisive approach. Known for her sharp legal acumen, Rapita argued that the evidence against Wendy was circumstantial at best, asserting that the absence of an eyewitness or direct physical evidence linking Wendy to the crime created reasonable doubt. She questioned the reliability of the surveillance footage and pointed out alternative scenarios, suggesting that someone else motivated by jealousy, anger, or another personal vendetta might have committed the crime. Rapita's strategy was to sow uncertainty, emphasizing that the case lacked definitive proof. Throughout the trial, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Louis' family sat in the front row, their faces a mosaic of grief, anger, and confusion. Bailey, in particular, appeared overwhelmed, her guilt and sorrow manifesting in silent tears as she grappled with the devastating fallout of her affair with Louis. Having lost her stepfather to murder, Bailey now faced the harrowing prospect of her mother being condemned to a life in prison. After 2 weeks of gripping testimony from witnesses and experts, the jury began deliberations. For 3 long days, the community anxiously awaited the verdict. When the decision was finally announced, the atmosphere in the courtroom was electric with anticipation. Wendy Channing was found guilty of first-degree murder, bringing the trial to a somber conclusion. Wendy's reaction was stoic. She remained composed, showing no visible signs of emotion. In contrast, Louis' family wept openly, their tears a mixture of sorrow and relief. The verdict made headlines across Huntsville, with the Huntsville Observer and local news stations dedicating extensive coverage to the story. During sentencing, Judge Lisa Davis delivered a stern yet empathetic address, condemning the act of violence while acknowledging the deep emotional turmoil that had led to it. She sentenced Wendy to life in prison without the possibility of parole, emphasizing that the evidence had left no room for doubt. The judge expressed hope that the sentence would bring Louis' family some semblance of closure, even as she recognized the enduring pain caused by the tragedy. Public reaction to the verdict was polarized. While some felt justice had been served, others believed Wendy's sentence was overly harsh, given the emotional and psychological strain she had endured. For Louis' family, however, the trial's conclusion marked the end of a painful chapter. Though their grief remained, there was solace in knowing that the person responsible for Louis' death had been held accountable. In the aftermath of the trial, life slowly began to move forward for those involved, though the shadow of the tragedy lingered. Wendy adjusted to the rigid routine of life at the Alabama Department of Corrections, her world now confined to strict schedules and limited visits. Media interest in the case eventually waned, replaced by the ebb and flow of new events in Huntsville, such as the annual Bikes, Blues, and BBQ motorcycle rally. Yet for those directly impacted, the wounds of the past remained fresh. Bailey, now 19 and back at the University of Alabama to continue her nursing studies, bore the heaviest burden. Struggling with guilt over her role in the affair that had sparked the chain of events leading to her stepfather's death, she sought solace in counseling and began the painstaking process of mending strained relationships with her family. Determined to move forward, Bailey focused on her education and personal growth, vowing to find peace within herself despite the long road to healing. The Channing family and the Huntsville community would forever be marked by the events surrounding Louis' murder. While the trial had brought a semblance of justice, the emotional scars it left behind would take far longer to heal, serving as a lasting reminder of the devastating impact of betrayal, loss, and violence.